Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the newest Walkabout Talkabout. Today we have Cole Medeiros from Stardew Valley, who's going to talk to us a little bit about that. But yeah, thanks for coming. Let's see who's up first. I think JP, are you up first? You want to take a swing and introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I'm JP Pistella. I'm a tech lead here at Mighty Coconut, working on Walkabout mini golf. See how I can do here. Is my golfing as good as my programming? Well, they're about the same. Yeah, slightly above average.
Oh, I'm up. All right. Well, hi, my name's Cole. I work very closely with Concerned Ape, helping to support him so that he can focus on developing Stardew Valley and currently Haunted Chocolatier. So
awesome.
My role is largely one of just support, kind of taking care of all the stuff that would occupy his time, but his time is a little bit better spent doing game dev. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Oh, and I just realized I have the default ball because I was doing some weird stuff on the dev branch before I came in here. Oh, well. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Lucas Martell. I'm the creator of Walkabout Mini Golf. But yeah, so I guess I'd love to sort of throw it over to you, Cole, to talk a little bit about how you got into the industry, how you sort of like got hooked up with Concerned Ape, just sort of like what's the backstory?
Sure. Yeah, it was, I was doing game design. I've always been interested in making games. Largely it was card games and board games in my personal time. And years ago I was doing like graphic design and things like that. And a friend of mine said, hey, they're hiring game designers in San Francisco. It was like a mobile game kind of companies. So I was doing that, mobile games and Facebook games originally. And I was working in that field for quite a while. And then a mutual friend said, hey, would you ever be interested in working with Concerned Ape and maybe talking to him about a board game? And so I started... I was connected with him through that mutual friend, and then we started talking about that. And it took about a year of talking about the board game before we had something where it was like, okay, now this actually feels like Stardew Valley. Let's figure out how to make it into a real thing. And it took about a year to go from the idea to the final board game. And when we released it, he said, hey, I could use some help with all the businessy stuff. And so I came on full time.
Awesome. I haven't played the board game before. Could you maybe just is there a quick pitch of it, or is it pretty
sure.
Is it pretty intense?
I think it's a little bit more intense than the video game. It's challenging. We wanted to make something that was like cooperative and collaborative. We very quickly realized, that lends itself a little bit better to the Stardew Valley experience. So you're trying to complete these goals and restore the community center, do the things that Grandpa is asking for. But we started with, I don't know if you're familiar with a game called Eldritch Horror.
I've heard of it. I haven't played it before. Do you know it, JP?
No, I actually was going to ask about that because I did hear that game, and then what was the other one? Crusoe? There was another game, I think.
Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, that influenced you. And I was curious what kind of specific things that you kind of took for, as influence for the board game of Stardew.
Sure, yeah. I just love those games because they're cooperative, but they're both very challenging. Everything in those games is bad. It hurts you and sets you back.
Yeah.
And so we thought, what if we kind of flip it on its head, and instead it's this, friendly, fun environment, but you're so far behind when you start, and then everything kind of helps you build momentum until the very end of the game. And so a lot of people, when they're playing the board game, they say, oh, this is impossible. There's no way you can complete this when you see all these goals. But then as time passes, you go, oh, I've got some items. I've got some things. I'm making progress. But when we were testing it, he kept saying, Concerned Ape, it was like, hey, I think it needs to be more challenging. We're beating it a little too easily. And so people say now the game is quite difficult to win at times. And but I don't know. I still enjoy playing it, and I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback about it. So it was fun to be a part of that project.
It's funny. I know the challenge aspect is definitely one of the. I'll go ahead and walk to the next holes we're chatting
Sure.
here. But the challenge aspect is something that we're constantly up against because we spend so much time just in here testing the game and playing around with stuff that usually by the time we get a course that's like really ready to play test, we've kind of lost that perspective of sort of like, how hard is this really? Or like, I can do it. Why can't, just everybody get good. Come on, what's wrong with you? But yeah, that's always the longer you work on something, it's really easy to lose track of all that. So it's interesting to hear that you were doing that with the board game. Did you kind of work it out sort of like on paper first, I'm guessing? Or what was the process for converting it?
It was just a lot of iterating for me. And I was actually using a program on Steam called Tabletop Simulator to prototype and then test it because all my friends and including Concerned Ape is up in Seattle, I'm in San Francisco, so it was nice to have the game in this sort of faux physical shape that we could play it and test it. But yeah, it's definitely true. You lose perspective on, is this too hard? Is it too easy? It's very hard to maintain that. The only way I know to do it is just playing it over and over again with people who haven't played it and see where they land,
Yeah. And I'd imagine that just sort of like with board games, probably the only way to do that really is sort of like live testing. You just have to put it in front of people. And then once they've played it once, it's sort of like you've burned that sort of initial reaction. So it's kind of an ongoing thing. We have the benefit, I think, of that as we're doing courses, each course is kind of a new thing. So it's a little bit more iterative, but when you're doing one big launch like that, you only get one of those first impressions. So you got to be in the room with people. Cool.
It was cool. It was a lot of fun. I had some folks that kind of tested it over and over with me. And so, and then we had new testers we were always seeking. I can follow you to the next hole over here. But it was neat to see. It was a neat challenge, honestly. How do you adapt something like Stardew Valley, which has, so many passionate fans who play it differently. That's another thing. People play the game in many different ways in terms of how intense they are.
Yeah.
So just converting it to the medium of board game was a lot to think about.
I am actually kind of. Oh, go ahead, JP.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm that variety of play. Like I play with my older brother and my nephew. And I just typically do the fishing and get the money so they can do the farming and do the mining. As I was like, I don't do the completionist, but I just like that I'm able to, kind of do my own thing, like you said. But it can be as intense as you want it to be. I just really like that variety. But it was interesting hearing about the board game being a little bit more challenging or intense. I mean, it feels like it's kind of a nature of the medium of like, you sit down for a board game, you expect to finish it in one sitting. Maybe two for an exception, but video games you get a save file, keep building on that. So
exactly,
that seemed like that'd be a big challenge. But I've yet to play the board game too, but I did just purchase it for my next game night.
Oh, cool!
Watch a bunch of videos, and I'm like, okay, this definitely looks like something we can get beyond. So,
well, I hope you enjoy it. Give me a shout if you need advice on rules or anything like that.
I'm definitely, I'd love to maybe even talk a little bit more about what you were just saying with sort of like the different ways people play, because we also see that with Walkabout, that there's some people there's even a lot of people who don't even like mini golf, and it's almost more it's just an activity that they could do with friends. It's more of a social thing, whereas some people are playing really competitively. I guess I'm kind of curious how you and Concerned Ape kind of go about that when you're designing something new or designing a new feature or something like that. How do you sort of like make sure that you're servicing both of those, or do you not worry too much about it?
It's really interesting because I came from a world of who's your target audience and how do you measure what they want and build all that stuff. And so when I was first working on the game, my first question was, who are we building this for? And he said something that really stuck with me, and I've repeated this over the years. He just said, "Hey, let's make something we really enjoy playing, and then hopefully other people will also enjoy playing it too."
Yeah.
And I feel like there's some profound wisdom in that, where it's like, if you just build it and it speaks to, what you enjoy, then, you're touching on something that's really powerful there, and you just kind of let that guide your decisions,
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine that that's also one of the things. I mean, we have a very similar approach, but you guys are also self-published, and I mean, it's all yours as well. So you kind of don't have you don't have to pitch it necessarily when you're doing something new. You can just sort of go where you want. I'm kind of curious what your experience has been with that. Like, I mean, it seems like you guys have just really, really benefited by having just absolute control. But yeah, what has that sort of self-publishing been like for you guys?
I think it's really interesting because, Stardew Valley is made by one person. It's all concerned apes, design sense and style, and so he kind of like, the whole thing is sort of very representative of his own likes and what he thinks is correct, and so I think it has a really steady theme running through it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I admire about him and in working with him is that he's just kind of, oh boy,
we're all in the same spot.
I'm under the bed. He's really been able to stay true to that, even now, and it just maintains this kind of authenticity, integrity, and he knows it so well because he is kind of the Bible for it, all the information, all the lore. So yeah, I think he's happy to continue kind of going down the course, the process that he's done so far.
And that's interesting. So he and you guys, is it just the two of you? Is there how many people are at the studio?
It's a small team. I'm one of 2 full-time employees, and then there's like a handful of contractors who help him, port the game and fix the game, and they work really hard and very closely with him. But we've kind of tried to stay a little scrappy, let's just do it. Let's figure it out. Let's not try, a lot of folks have asked, would you like to grow the company and make all this big stuff? And I think he's happy to continue making games the way he's done it and trying to support it with a small team of people he trusts. And so we've just been able to keep it kind of very indie, I guess.
That's fantastic. And that's a huge part of being able to do that. I know we have grown a good bit, but it has been more because of the updates that we're doing, because this was a solo project when we first launched, but it very quickly we added a few people to the team. But now so much of it is more about the people wanted more courses, and so it's really all about, we needed a much larger team to give people what they wanted at the pace that they wanted it at. And but I mean, we're still very small and scrappy on a different level, but I think a lot of folks on the team have also come from that world. So it's actually great to hear other people who are in that same boat, that they don't want to necessarily grow for the sake of growth. And just expanding kind of too big, too fast. But I look around at these courses, and I'm a big fan of this game because there's so much love and detail kind of woven into. And I mean, I come in here, I play a lot with my dad and my brother. My dad actually got a headset so that we could be together even when we're far apart. And so we come in here, we hang out, I say, hey, you want to do a round of golf in the afternoon? And and it's just, my brother was up in Oregon for a while. He's part of the Coast Guard, and so the 3 of us could get in here. So I can see how you need more content, and it takes a long time to put this level of detail into things. Well, and I think for us, so much of it too was the quality did increase to a large extent too. Like each course, like you can really see the progression as people who are just coming in who are just even, you know, better and more focused on their craft, including all the tech stuff. Like so many of the things that we have in here that we couldn't have done. But I also feel like that's the nature of this game. Maybe one of the other things that I'm kind of curious is sort of like, I've played Stardew Valley, but I haven't had the time to like really sink my teeth into it. How often do you guys do updates for it or sort of like add new content to it? Because that's a huge amount of work that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah, the updates are very interesting. I think it's kind of a bit of like the lifeblood of the game in a way, like the fact that it stays fresh and new, and there's always potentially something more down the road. And you know, he's said a couple times that he doesn't plan to, you know, to close the book on Stardew in terms of it's all him still. So it's all him doing the writing, developing all the ideas kind of come from him saying, "Oh, this would be kind of neat," you know, and then he just sort of starts tinkering because he enjoys it. I think he just kind of has fun. Oh boy.
Oh, they're perfect. That's
there we
exactly
go.
what you want to do.
Oh, nice.
Use it.
Right
I'm going to try to redeem myself and do the exact same thing now. I'm playing left-handed as my excuse because my, my other controller is acting up on me. So
this is like the Princess Bride. You're the left-handed swordsman.
It's okay. I actually love that you're kicking my butt.
I've you know, I feel when I play this game, sometimes I'm really on and sometimes I cannot sink a shot for anything.
Yep. Blame the equipment. That's what I always do.
All right.
But so that's interesting. Boy. So, and I know that that he's working on Haunted Chocolatier at the moment, but it sounds like that there's still a good bit that's going on of further development of Stardew Valley that's kind of happening at the same time. Is that just sort of like a ping pong sort of back and forth then?
You know, it's funny because as a company, you know, I'm also used to in the past having like roadmaps and, you know, this is what's being built and this is who's involved and stuff. But because so much of it is just what he's doing, he has a lot of that in his head, I think. Yeah. And, you know, I meet with him once a week, and my goal is just to update him on all of the things that are going on, things that are coming in, offers and, you know, possibilities. But I don't have a lot of visibility into like what he has planned for the next update. It's very mysterious.
So you get to see it when all of us get to see it.
Exactly. Like he'll kind of drop it to me like I have no idea if and when anything is in construction right now. I know that he's focused very much on Haunted Chocolatier. But what I see of that game mostly comes from his Twitter. So
even you were getting the updates from social media.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think, you know, he's not trying to keep me in the dark on purpose. He's in the workshop, you know, just sitting at his office working, trying to get this stuff built, and that's how he likes to do it. So.
I can also see though that's kind of part of it. I'll maybe confess that I probably drive some of the team crazy because sometimes I don't necessarily say what's up because I haven't figured it out, and other times I say something and then it screws everything up because I change my mind later, or we change our minds later, or we realize that something else is happening. So there's definitely sort of like the both sides that I feel like we contend with. So
yes. Yeah, I think it just comes down to game making is really hard. And, you know, to bring a bunch of people together and make an experience that feels all aligned, and you don't really know what's going to work sometimes until you do it. So it's always just moving is how I feel. Yeah.
I know we were, I've kind of lamented a little bit, although I do think that I love the organicness, and it definitely feels more like jazz than, you know, there's definitely a good bit of improvisation that's happening across our whole team. But I do occasionally long, because I come from the film world, and there was something about that where you spend a little bit of time you storyboard you write the script, you storyboard everything. There's a very, very clear process to the creative side of it. And then largely when you get down to the end of it, there's execution. There's still creative stuff that's happening all the way through, but at a certain point it does become, it's very linear, it's very waterfall, and you just sort of like, you give feedback, but it just sort of like, it becomes sort of like it's a much more predictable process, and you can say very, very early on exactly how long something's going to take, how much it's going to cost. And, you know, unless something wildly goes off the rails, you can usually be pretty accurate with that. Whereas game dev seems to be the exact opposite of that, where there's always going to be changes and yeah, it's very, very difficult to scope some things, it feels like. But this is also, JP, your opportunity to say, well, yeah, there's a way. Here's what you've been doing wrong for all these years. So.
No, I mean... Oh, there we go. No,
yeah, if you want to tell me off publicly, it's a great opportunity.
No, I mean, I think for me, at least personally, you know, having the start of the pipeline, the start of the development being very open-ended, free-flowing, like not rigid, no red tape is very important. And you pretty much said it well. As you get closer to the end where you need to be doing polishing, refining, you're getting, you know, release, you need pictures, formatting, all kind of, you know, tedious but very important in execution. That stuff can be a little bit more planned, and so it's kind of that balance between making sure there's flexibility on the front end or upstream, and then downstream that there is that structure there, and we're like, okay, we know this is what it is. We're the content's locked. Now it's the, you know, production side of getting things out the door. So I think it's just a balance, and I think both, you know, it sounds like just indie in general, whether it's video games, board games, you know, that having that small team that's flexible, able to react, that doesn't get too rigid all the way upstream. So I think it's a constant balance, and I think that's what's great is when you're small, you can kind of rub up against each other and create that friction of like, I want more like this, kind of this, like I want more structure. Like, no, I want more freedom. And it's like, okay, great. Let's give and take and work through that, and not just have it kind of dictated through the company to be one way or the other.
True.
Anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There's benefits to both sides. There really is, and it's hard to strike the balance. But you're always just kind of finding it, I feel like.
Yeah.
On that note, I heard the iteration that you went through with the mines for the board game.
Oh,
was probably one of the biggest. What was that kind of like? You know, working with Concerned Ape and yourself. You know, just
he was
a lot.
He was a great partner, though. I feel like I've worked with, you know, I was still getting to know him, and I've worked with folks that are like IP holders that are tricky. But he always had really pointed feedback that was really actionable. And I think it's just because he had touched every part of Stardew. So he had like that, he knew what it was like to be an artist. He knows what it's like to be an engineer, building a mechanic, you know, and iterate on it. And we released the game, and the biggest feedback, was like, oh, the mines are just brutal. And I was like, I mean, they can be tough, but I never encountered that in playtesting, that they were impossible. And I went back and I went through the cards. I actually have, it almost looks like a music sheet, you know, of how many rolls did it take to get down to each level. And I've checked every single thing. And I iterated a bunch on it, and I sort of discovered there was about 30% of the cards, maybe 25% of the cards that were just painful, just really like, and if you're playing the game a lot, you're like, well, sometimes you get a painful card, you know, this is just, I got a bad break, you know, but it could happen that you could play the board game one time, get every one of those painful cards in the mines, have a terrible experience. And that was what we discovered, and we wanted to iterate on it. So we went back and we adjusted those cards for the second version. Yeah.
It's so funny also that the just sort of audience perception too, because there's a lot that we find around sort of like, if you hit a particularly difficult hole early on or something like that, it definitely sort of gives people kind of a bad taste in the mouth that can kind of give you that makes it hard to overcome. And I would especially imagine that when you're dealing with any amount of randomness, that can particularly feel like the game designer is being mean.
Yes.
I think that one of the things that we always design around is like, it should feel like if you have a bad shot, it's because you messed something up, not because we created something that was impossible.
Yes.
But when you're dealing with cards, especially, there's just such a random element that I'd imagine it's very difficult to work around that feeling if people start to feel
Yes. You're absolutely right. And that's what that feedback was, that, some folks said, gosh, I'm the miner and my turn is just do nothing. Okay, that was my turn because I just rolled poorly, and so it was a good call. And he said, let's wait, let's sit on this feedback, let's see. Let's soak it in and see what we do. I mean, I was so excited when we pushed the button and kind of made the game available, because so many fans, we sold out on day one of our whole print run, and it was a pretty large print run in terms of board games. And that, I think that's just a testament to, his work, what he's created with Stardew Valley, and how many fans are passionate about it. But I was like, oh my goodness, we need to print more copies. There's a lot more people that want the game. I'm getting all these emails. And he was like, hold on, let's see if we're going to make some changes. And as a board game designer, I went, oh my gosh, that's going to be so much work. How are we going to do this? But he was right. He was totally right. And we did make a better product, I think.
Well, that's also, again, the benefit of being self-published, because I would imagine that, did you guys just use like a fulfillment company? Like, you didn't have like another company that was sort of printing and distributing them for you, did you?
No, we were, we were working with a manufacturer that was based in Michigan, I think. Okay. And then they were being shipped to Florida to another company that was helping us fulfill them all. Okay. It was interesting, going from digital to like analog, where, with digital, it's like, oh, if you want to push a patch, you just do it. With a board game, it's like, well, we have about 1,000 games stuck on a truck waiting for the road to clear in Tennessee. Oh, yeah. And and these kinds of delays are sort of unpredictable,
Yeah, I mean, that's like the old school like gaming. Like, I remember talking with Rand Miller about that, because they had Myst was all originally launched on CD, and just how much there was with the physical sort of like actual, shipping, delivery, getting it onto sort of like the physical media being like one of the biggest hurdles and things to sort of like pack everything into, in a way that we're so used to just like, just add just throw it up on the server and people download it live. It's so much easier now. But
it's definitely just a different thing, a different challenge,
Yeah, I know. Ooh, nice shot. That, I'm glad the physics worked out for you on that one. I know one of the things that I'm just kind of personally kind of curious to pick your brain about, because I know something that I had never thought of when I was first making Walkabout was the sort of what they're now calling sort of cozy games. And I know we were talking a little bit beforehand that that wasn't a term before, for you or for you guys either. Like, that kind of has come out more recently. I'm kind of curious what you guys think about that, and sort of like, if that's sort of like, as a genre, it's really sort of come around, but you guys were kind of one of the games that really defined that. I'm just, kind of curious what you guys think about that sort of that label.
Yeah, it does come up a lot that people, they say Stardew Valley is a cozy game. I'm not sure he would label it as that. I think it's kind of what the player wants it to be, because some people play Stardew, very, I wanted to say aggressively. I don't think that's the right word, but they're intensely, they're making money, they're doing their things, and it's almost, I read an interesting article that said Stardew is kind of like a mirror for the player. It really does reflect back the experience that they're seeking. And so, when I play it, I spend a lot of time in the mines. I don't befriend anybody. I have certain things that I really enjoy.
Win. Yes.
And I don't think I'm really that good at winning it, because I'm so distracted by all the little side quests you can do, and I just enjoy doing stuff in the game. But some people take it, they got spreadsheets based on it, and they're aggressively building it out. I know people, some of my friends that play this game, who have unlocked every single thing and found every single ball, and they're like the completionists. But I would say I watched my daughter playing it and Stardew, and I saw she was just fascinated by the frogs hopping through the grass, you know?
Yeah.
And just these simple, relaxing things. And I think it's really cool that it can be so many different things to different people.
Yeah. I mean, we've run into very much the same sort of thing where there's a lot of people who are playing it socially, who are playing it for just drastically different reasons. There's some people who use it almost more meditation or whatever, but yeah, it's interesting that you guys don't like, because that was never necessarily the intent. But yeah, I guess I'm just kind of I'm going back to maybe a question even kind of from earlier. I'm kind of curious how you sort of, as you're designing those or designing new features, sort of like how you keep all of those players. Wait, you already answered that one. I just realized I've been in too many meetings today. I'm asking a question. I thought we talked about that before we started recording, but no, I literally asked that. I'm not going to make you do it again.
No, but there is something, you know, somebody did ask him one time, like, what do you think about when you put new stuff in? And he's like, I need to think about, like, what is the experience for the player who's just starting? What is the experience for the player who's at the end of, you know, of the content? And how do I put these things in so they don't like disrupt anything else? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge of adding. Like, some things are very safe to add, like a new hat. You know, it's like, okay, that's pretty easy. But if it's a new mechanism that affects other things, it's really difficult to account for all the variations, you know?
Yeah, I know. We've kind of, we've literally just been talking about that in one of the meetings right before this, because a couple of the new things that we're working on, we're even kind of intentionally almost burying a little bit, that they're in there that people can easily get to, but it's not presented to you immediately. So that it's something that you can find if that's the sort of thing that you're into, but it doesn't necessarily affect a new user, a new player coming on board. They're not looking at that. They're not having to get overwhelmed by too much information or too many options, but you still want to have all of those in there. And yeah, definitely it is a fine balance to keep all of those, all those different pieces working and all the different types of players, you know, being supported.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, the best way to do it is to kind of think of it in, like, if you can, in like areas. Like, here's my little starting area that I expect the starting players to come into, and then they can go into these other spaces that are more advanced. If you can somehow do that, you know.
Yeah, it all just depends on the type of game you're doing. And I am also fascinated because one of the other things. We just finished. There we go. JP kicked our butts. Way to go, JP.
You guys are doing all the talking. I can focus on the golf. It's not fair.
Nice.
Actually, one of the other things, if we want to just come back to hole 9 here, so that Wesley can can keep shooting a little bit. One of the other things that I'd love to also just keep chatting about a little bit. I am curious. There's a huge economy aspect of the rule set that's around sort of like Stardew Valley. And maybe this was even something that you dealt with in the card game, but like, how do you go about building that and maintaining that? And then just sort of like, I'd imagine that the ongoing balancing act of that is a big factor. I'm just kind of curious about that. That is something that we don't have to deal with. I'm just kind of curious how you even tackle something that big.
I mean, I think he approached it very iteratively, where it was just, you know, he even said the design of Stardew is like, I started with making a map that a character could walk around on. And then it's like, okay, what's the next logical thing? I don't know exactly what it was, but imagine it's crops. Okay, I can put a seed in the ground and water it. Okay, that works. And I can speak a lot more to the card game, because that was the way I make games. Is like, I'll kind of say, well, I need this deck, I need this deck, I need this deck. And I make some sort of cards, just sort of throwing stuff in there. And then once you start playing it, you go, ooh, these are all way too hard to get, or too easy, or too high value. And so I start kind of tweaking. And the hardest thing is that one deck might affect another deck. So it's like, I changed the values here, I need to also change the values over here. And so it's this kind of constant process of, nurturing them until they the playing feels right, but I don't approach it from a mathematical point of view. That's just not my strength. And I've met economy designers who are amazing, and they just do mathematic miracles, you know. I just approach it much more kind of almost like brute force, like put it together, see what works, and then edit. Yeah.
It's that balancing and testing. Do you guys actually do like testing on the like any of the Stardew Valley updates, or is there a whole lot of user testing with that, or is it more gut?
I'm not sure how many people are involved, but I do know, like, my experience was when he was working on the update, this last one, he was hands-on working on it and testing it every day for what felt like 10 months. Like, just every day. And he was like, yeah, I play it all the time. I start a new save, I start playing, I get to the thing. Okay, there it is. And he's just almost like a baker, like just rolling out the dough again and again and again, you know, to make
perfecting that perfect lamination. You got to get your temperature just right. Yeah.
That's nice. So he does a ton of testing, but you know, it's like then you put the update out and millions of people play in millions of different combinations, and they tend to find things that are just impossible for a small team to go through every possible iteration. And so then that's why he tries to stay very active and fix these things as they come in and make sure it stabilizes.
So there's kind of a constant sort of rebalancing once it's sort of out in the wild, basically.
I think mostly the updates kind of, they can affect and tweak small things that cause problems. And so he's trying to address, you know, any bugs that come up.
More bugs than rebalancing necessarily.
I think so. I don't know how much has been, I'm sure a lot, but I think it's all like minor stuff. He really does try to make sure it fits in his sort of internal logic before it's going out. But yeah.
I mean, we'll do a similar thing where we'll fix bugs and we will maybe update visual stuff, but we've learned that like the holes are, after it's out, sacrosanct. You can't tweak the holes. I think we did one early on because I had done just like those initial 4 courses. And then I think by the 5th or 6th course, we're like, okay, we've learned a lot of things. Let's go back and maybe just polish up a couple of the holes that just aren't fun. But that's the only time we've done it. There was definitely a lot of pushback on that because it was changing what people had learned. But now we've also just learned, okay, take the time. Those were, I think they were necessary changes early on because it was just such a new thing. But we're super cautious to not do that ever again. So especially if anything ever affects the physics, some little tiny tweak. I know that's probably the bane of JP's existence. Of whenever one of the testers says that, the physics feel off.
It always blows my mind at how slight of a tweak to the physics from some new system affecting old is picked up by the players, which really is just a testament to them being able to know these courses so well. Yeah,
that's true.
And definitely makes sense of like, you know, everyone's put a bunch of time into these courses, playing them, and you know, if we tweak them, then it's just not the same to be like, the statement of, I got this score on this course. It's like, well, was that before or after they completely changed it? You know? And like, I don't know if Stardew's the same way of like, because like you said, there's completionists, there's speed runners.
Yes.
I think more like you do the mines, I do the fishing, and it's just relaxing. But I'm curious for those competitive. It feels like anybody can make anything competitive.
Oh yeah.
That's a huge challenge of changing the original, which is funny too, because I did hear Concerned Ape talking about that of liking doing the updates for Stardew rather than necessarily Stardew Valley 2. He's doing Haunted Chocolatier, but just kind of he said in an interview that he liked that it's easier or maybe more fun just adding to it, like you said, what does he want to put in it, and then integrating that as opposed to kind of doing all the kind of boring underlaying architecture that needs to be in place first. But then kind of the flip side, you do bring up a good point of it doesn't mean it's easier, it's challenging because you got to think of the new player plus that experienced player and where that all fits in. So just huge kudos to what he's doing with the video game. Huge shout out to you in the board game. So
thank you very much. It was really fun, and it continues to be a lot of fun. I feel very honored to be a part of something that matters so much to people. And I feel like I've learned a lot from him about making games, and it's just the fan base is phenomenal too. They're just very kind, nice.
You don't have a whole
people.
lot of real aggro, sort of like just, yeah.
Not too many. I mean, yeah. We get a couple emails, but I honestly interpret some of those as they're just very passionate about the game. And they're like, hey, I want this thing and I want that thing. And so it's like, okay, this is actually good feedback, so.
Yeah. I was very much joking. We also just have a very community that, generally you don't have a whole lot of people who are too aggressive about mini golf, or sort of like really, really trying to dominate everyone around them or something like that. So I feel very fortunate that just the space that we're in, and sort of like, the community is so supportive and everything. So cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or anything that you want to plug or just say to everybody watching?
I mean, I hope Stardew fans out there continue to enjoy the game, and we have another run of concerts coming up soon, so that's something to keep an eye out for if it's in a city near you.
That's awesome.
And
is that I think I saw that there's one coming to Austin here pretty soon. We'll have to see if we can get the team out to that. So is it like a full orchestra basically, or like a reduced orchestra? Cool.
The previous one was a chamber orchestra, so it was, I think, 15 musicians.
Okay.
And this one is maybe two times at least bigger than that, or maybe even bigger. Yeah. And it's got some of the music from the original show, a lot of new stuff that was not included in the first run. But I think it's going to be spectacular. I went to several of the first concerts, and each time I was just like, wow, this music is really fun to listen to up on stage. So
that's fantastic. Cool. Well, thank you again, Cole, for taking the time to chat with us, and JP and Wesley for shooting it. So we'll see you all next time.